Hey everybody, in this head-to-head, we're going to take a look at the best battery-powered top handle chainsaw for 2023. Battery technology, it's evolved to become arguably the king of outdoor power equipment, but does it measure up to what pros, dedicated pros, need in the field? So if we look back to 2020, the Toolbox Buzz crew hosted our first best cordless chainsaw. That was a head-to-head where we evaluated 12 traditional rear-handled saws. Now, during that testing, it was clear to us that battery power was an excellent option for homeowners and serious DIYers, but not for full-time use in the forestry and or tree care industry. Fast forward to today, 2023, and battery tool technology continues to evolve. Additionally, the pro arborist and landscaping trades have seen an increased demand for pro-grade battery offerings. Many communities, even some states like California, are moving to ban gas-powered OPE altogether. So bearing all this in mind, the Toolbox Buzz crew set out to find out who makes the best battery-powered top handle chainsaw. Now, we talk about top handle. Top handle chainsaws are often commonly referred to as a climbing saw or bucket saw, and they're designed for in-tree use by trained climbers, arborists, when working from a bucket truck or maybe up in the air in the tree. These environments require users to make cuts at adverse angles from overhead and even unsupported positions. They're often hung from a belt or harness worn by arborists, especially when climbing, trees for takedown work. These unique demands require a saw to be compact and robust, and obviously move that handle, that rear handle at the top, to scale down that overall length. In order to ensure that our testing protocols catered to tree care pros, we enlisted some help. Our tests were conducted in Oxford, Connecticut by crew member Wes Bartosik. He's a chainsaw fanatic. And Wes reached out to his friend Scott, who owns Angel Lovick Tree Service. I hope I didn't screw that up, Scott. Scott provided invaluable feedback to us on how each of these saws stacked up for pro use. So for the lineup, we looked at 8 saws from 6 manufacturers: Echo, Greenworks, Husqvarna, Makita, Milwaukee, and Stihl. If you want more information about these saws, the specs, the chain pitch, the gauge, you need to read the article on toolboxbuzz.com, because the article always has more information. Okay, the testing criteria. To keep a sample pool consistent as possible, we developed a selection criteria. First and foremost, the saw must have a purpose-built arborist saw. It must be an arborist saw for professional tree work. There are several saws on the market that happen to have a top handle, but they're not tailored to professionals in any other way. Next, we needed to limit the bar length between 12 and 14 inches. Some models that were sent by manufacturers had their OEM bars swapped out so that we could get that proper length for testing. While we could not narrow down the pitch or gauge on the saws, amongst our samples, the bar lengths we kept consistent. Finally, we limited the battery pack amp hour size to kitted offerings from each manufacturer. Now, some of the manufacturers offer their saws kind of a la carte system with multiple chargers and battery offerings, and you think of Husqvarna and Stihl. That's how they do things. For those folks, we selected the recommended battery offering for the tool. We made the best choice for the tool. Makita and Stihl both had 2 models that we included in the testing, so they each sent 2 models each. Makita had their 36 Legacy saw, the XGT 40-volt saw, and Stihl had their Legacy pruning saw as well as their newest saw. I, for one, was excited to see how the Makita 36 and 40-volt compared. Our saws were evaluated and ranked based on the following criteria. So we looked at ability to stall the saw out, small diameter cutting speed versus large diameter cutting speed. We looked at weight, decibels, price, features, and ergonomics. Based upon this information, we name a best overall winner as well as a best value winner. We always do that. So let's talk about what I meant by stall out. So before beginning our performance testing, we wanted to measure the ability of the user to stall out the saw during the cut. Now, why would you want to do that, right? Traditionally, a pro-grade saw can be leaned into when cutting to push through some tough material, or pinching forcing of the wood, or maybe just to overcome a dull chain. Battery-powered saws are far more temperamental and less forgiving of the user levering them into a cut during use. You can't lean on it like that. Many manufacturers often include overload protections in their battery tools to shut the saw down if maybe the motor or the battery is being overworked. Now, while that is a great idea in theory to protect the tool and protect your investment, it can be problematic for pros in the field. An arborist may be suspended in the air, making an intricate hinge cut on a limb. At that moment, the user, that arborist, needs to maybe lean in that saw and be able to power through and not bog down or stall out completely and have to reset a saw. He needs that cut to go. So based on this, we set up a testing rig using a section of maple logs. The test cutter was instructed to make basically cross cut while burying the saw to the nose and leaning into the cut. The test cutter was also instructed to apply the same amount of force on each time and try to cause the saw to stall out and be as fair as possible. The best performers in the test were the Milwaukee and Steel, the MSA 220. Our test cutter described both of those saws as beastly and were unable to stall them out at all. Now, both saws provide outstanding, consistent power throughout the cut. Second place on that test went to Greenworks saw, which slowed down during the test but continued cutting while being pushed through that cut. All three of these saws demonstrated excellent low-end torque band that's ideal for demanding, cutting tasks. The Husqvarna and the smaller steel, the MSA 161T, were the next best performance, stalling out only once, the bar was at depth, consistent with, say, full width of the bar. Both Makita saws stalled out once the bar reached approximately halfway into the width of the bar, into the cut. And once this occurred, both saws had to be lifted out of the cut and then re-engaged to begin cutting again. The Makita XGT then stalled a second time before completing the cut. It seemed to our test crew that the Makitas were stalling basically to preserve electronics. It was built in. But this additional stop-start represents wasted time and productivity for professional users. The Echo struggled the most in this test. The saw stopped multiple times and struggled to perform when leaned into by the cutter. Now, the Echo is also the smallest saw we tested and appears to be ideally suited really for cutting smaller diameter limbs or pruning work. Our test crew all agreed that the saws with the larger full-size chains were preferable for commercial work, and that reset buttons really belong in video games and not on chainsaws, so get rid of the reset buttons. Okay, we moved on to a speed cut test, and we wanted to find out the fastest cutter among the group, and we designed two speed cutting tests. The first was a smaller diameter cut to simulate a limbing or pruning job, and the second was a larger diameter cut to simulate kind of a full takedown job. For both tests, we used green hardwood logs from tree species native to New England. That's where we are. We focused on green wood with this head-to-head to simulate conditions that pros would encounter in the field, up in a tree. So to keep our wood as green as possible, we dropped the trees we tested that day. Both tests were performed on sugar maple logs. Now, maple is indigenous out in this area. It's a medium-grade hardwood to basically offers a compromise between some harder species like, say, oak, which is plentiful in the Northeast, and some of the pine species that are common, say, in the West Coast. The Janka scale, which the industry standard for hardness, lists sugar maple approximately at 1450 pound-feet. Now, the smaller diameter piece measured that we cut was about approximately 5 inches, and the larger was approximately 8 inches. The test cut pieces were strapped securely to a log stand, and the same cutter performed these tests on all 8 saws. We try to just keep it consistent. All 8 saws had a fresh factory sharp chain. The instructions for the crew member doing the cutting was to guide the saw through the cut without leaning into it and to allow gravity, the weight of the saw, the gravity, to just make the cut and do the work. For the smaller diameter test, the cutter performed a down, up, down cut to make a total of 3 cookies. The larger diameter test was limited to a down, up only in order to prevent a stall out or maybe a thermal overheating overload. Okay, so the small diameter speed test. The winner of that was the Steel, the MSA 220, at 8.47 seconds, finishing almost 3 seconds faster than the runner-up. Now, the runner-up was Milwaukee. They had 11.10 seconds. Husqvarna third with 11.56 seconds. Slowest cutter in the group was the Echo at 23.35 seconds. Okay, now we move on to the large diameter speed cutting test. The winner of that was the Steel MSA 220 again at 10.97 seconds. Makita XGT, the 40 volt, came in second, 11.59 seconds. Husqvarna beat out the Milwaukee for the number 3 spot with 0.01 second. The slowest cutter was Echo, and that was 39.29 seconds. Now the steel, let's talk about that for a second. Totally unstoppable. The saw's heavier weight and powerful battery system just allowed it to rip through these tests. This test, though, also demonstrates the capabilities of the new Makita XGT platform when compared to the legacy 36 volt. The XGT, it provided constant speed and power throughout the test and was impressive. The Echo, look, it's a smaller saw we tested, and it lagged in both tests by a substantial margin. Now let's talk a little bit about weight. It's a huge factor when selecting a top panel saw. By design, these tools are meant to be used at adverse angles and uncomfortable positions. A tree care pro may use one of these saws at shoulder height, for example, for several hours, and that's fatiguing. Therefore, to paint a complete picture of what each of these saws weigh, we took 2 different measurements and kind of gathered some data on that. The first was a bare tool head weight, where we weighed each saw with an empty bar oil reservoir and removed the battery in the bar. Then we weighed the saws with the bar, the chain attached, the oil reservoir filled, and the battery inserted. We kind of had the different data to evaluate. The lightest saw was the Echo at 7.6 pounds. It's light. Second place was Steel, the MSA 161T at 9.84 pounds. Third place, Husqvarna at 10.16 pounds. The heaviest saw was the Steel, the MSA 220, the TC, and that's 12.38 pounds. Now the Echo, incredibly light saw in the hand, under 4 pounds as a power head. Even fully assembled, it's almost as light as the Milwaukee power head. On the opposite side of the spectrum, the Steel, the MSA 221, the power head is about 1 pound heavier than its gas counterpart, which is the MS201, I think it's called. So anyway, we moved on to decibel output, and to measure the noise output, we set up a jig with a decibel meter placed at a designated location to measure noise output consistently. We then ran each saw for 10 seconds, full speed, not under load, and just recorded the decibel range. The quietest saw was the Steel, the MSA 161T at 80.8 decibels. And coincidentally, this is the only saw that's under the OSHA 85 decibel threshold. Second place was Milwaukee at 91.3 decibels, and third place Husqvarna at 92.4 decibels. The loudest saw tested was the Makita XGT at 100.9 decibels. Interesting though, our pro users, our pro testers, they don't care about decibel ratings. It's not a concern to them. They all wear helmets with built-in hearing protection and radio capabilities, allowing them to communicate with their ground guys. However, lower decibel tools or output on battery saws compared to, say, gas counterparts can be beneficial if you're working in an area with, say, a noise-based work hour restriction or something, such as maybe it's a residential neighborhood or something like that. I don't know. Price. For this head-to-head, we chose to rank these tools based on kit price. Now, while carpenters, plumbers, electricians are likely loyal to their battery platform and heavily invested, the same cannot be said about tree care pros. A tree care pro is likely buying a battery top panel saw for the very first time, and no other tool that they own will run on that platform. They don't have a platform on their truck. Therefore, we chose to select kit option for the price ranking that included a battery for testing. The winner of the price ranking is a tie between Greenworks Commercial and Milwaukee. As of July 2023, both companies were offering this as a kit with a battery and charger for $500, $499.99. Second place was the Echo at $549. Third place, Makita 36 volt at $579. Our most expensive saws were the Husqvarna at $1,050 and the Steel, the MSA 2020 TC at like $1,697 or something like that. Look, while price is important to all users, we chose not to include it in our rankings, and we do that a lot because it can skew things. Features, let's move on to that. Our entire saw lineup featured outstanding pro-grade featured saws. For example, all 8 saws include manual chain tension adjustment systems. This traditional tooled style adjustment is our preferred method due to its robustness. And look, to determine which saw had the best set of features, we outlined 9 evaluation criteria. We then ranked each saw's feature on a scale of 1 to 3, with 3 being the best. The saw's total overall score was used to determine rank, and our evaluation criteria was as follows. We looked at the felling spikes, chain brake, contour response, lanyard rings, electronic chain brake, automatic oiler, manual chain tensioner, additional modes and features, standout features, and then obviously safety auto shutoff. The saw with the best features was the Milwaukee. The M18 saw has outstanding aggressive felling spikes as well as a large manual chain brake lever that's responsive and has a really nice positive click action. The steel lanyard ring is in a great position and locks in the open position as well. It has a very responsive electric chain brake, and the chain tensioner features an extra bar stud to actually lock the mechanism securely. Our crew pretty much all agreed that an automatic oiler system is preferred option. Milwaukee's manual adjusting oiler performed well in our testing. They just like the automatic stuff. The Milwaukee also is the only saw with an onboard wrench, we call it a scrench, and while not mandatory feature, it was just a nice bonus. It was nice to have. Second place went to Stihl, the MSA 2020 TC-0, which has an outstanding billet of professional grade features. And interesting enough, the O designation in the model number is Stihl's way to refer to their electric bar oil monitoring system. This saw will monitor the flow of bar oil via an internal laser. The system automatically monitors for dirt and contaminants as well, and when the oil is low or full of debris, a light will activate on the saw's main control to alert the user. Feature is unlike anything our testing crew has ever seen before. It's a really cool feature. Now, where Milwaukee excelled over the Stihl to our crew was the difference in the safety auto shutoff systems. The Stihl has a push-button activation switch to turn the saw on and off. There's also a warning light to alert the user when the chain brake is turned off as well, and a tang safety atop of the grip that must be depressed. Once the user releases that tang safety, with the chain brake off, for example, the saw shuts off within 5 seconds. It was a real annoyance to our crew during testing, and our pro users all agreed that it was way too fast. It should give them a little bit more time and not do that. Conversely, the Milwaukee uses a spring-loaded tang safety grip, no additional on-off switches. It's intuitive to use and ruggedly simple. Our pro users agreed that Milwaukee's system would be more user-friendly and productive for them in the field. Now, third place resulted in a tie between Echo and Husqvarna saws. The Echo is an extremely lean-built saw. Doesn't have many extra bells and whistles. It actually lost points due to its shorter felling spikes, and it has a very simple but excellent push-start activation switch. The Husqvarna features an excellent digital battery display at the activation switch to show power consumption in real time, as well as an eco mode for battery consumption. However, the Husqvarna chain tensioning mechanism, it makes it really difficult to get seated properly when removing the clutch cover and changing the bars or chains and stuff like that. Twice, the Husqvarna saw chain completely slacked during our testing. And by the way, we experienced the same issues in our 2020 head-to-head as well. So Husqvarna needs to pay attention and maybe adjust for that. Rounding out the category, the Makita 36-volt saw has an impressive feature set, including high-performance turbo cutting mode. And we found the mode was difficult to switch back and forth from. So people aren't going to use it then. The Makita XGT, it lacks some of the additional features of the legacy 36-volt saw, but both offerings have excellent felling spikes and chain brake designs. The Greenworks Commercial and the Stihl MSA 161 had very basic features compared to the rest of the test sample. Greenworks lost points due to having kind of rounded felling spikes that just did not grab into cutting materials well, and kind of a confusing power activation button. So, I don't know. All right, let's talk about ergonomics. It is one of the most subjective categories, but one of our favorite and most discussed evaluations. We really get into the weeds. If a tool is not comfortable or works against the user in any way, it's useless, right? It's almost useless or worthless. The ergonomics of a top panel saw are critical to a pro user in the field or in a tree, working up in the air, wearing gloves, working in inclement weather. We chose a total of 6 evaluation criteria that would affect that. We talk about grip comfort, grip contour, Forward handlebar angle, bar oil fill caps, weight and balance, ease of the battery change. The winner of this section in a three-way tie was Echo Makita XGT in the Steel 2020. All three saws featured well-rounded, contoured, comfortable grips. The texture on all of them is excellent, and all the controls are pretty easy to read and reach with one hand. The forward handlebars are also out of the way but easy to reach with an offhand. Weight and balance were interesting with these three models because they represent the best of pretty much small, medium, and large offerings. The Echo is lighter, the small one, and more compact, but both the Makita XGT and the Steel are compact as well in their overall design with no real wasted space. Well done. Although all three saws received the same overall score, the Echo had the best and most comfortable grip of the three, as well as the nicest bar oil reservoir cap, believe it or not. It was beautiful. However, the Makita XGT and Steel have superior battery changing mechanisms. Steel is the easiest to change the battery thanks to the battery being spring-loaded and inserted from the top of the saw. Now, Husqvarna took second place in ergonomics for battery top handle chainsaws with excellent weight and balance, as well as very comfortable grip material and handlebar angles. The criticisms of the Husqvarna were that the chain brake lever is too close and can be cramped on the user's hands. Additionally, the sliding tang safety on top of the grip was awkward to all of our test cutters. Milwaukee came in third, and they have an excellent grip material as well as had the most room for the hands, for gloves and all that. The Milwaukee is a very big saw. It sacrifices compact size for more room, but it feels a bit bulky compared to most of the other saws. Now, the side handle on the Milwaukee also bows out kind of further than any of the saws we tested. Kind of makes us think of a beachcomber bicycle feel. And finally, the Makita 36-volt saw was bulky and more off balance than its counterparts due to the two battery system. Now, look, while the batteries are easy to change, managing two batteries was not anything that our test crew viewed as desirable. The triple manual grip safeties of the Steel MSA 161T were our least favorite and seemed almost impossible to use safely. And if you're a lefty, forget about it. The Greenworks saw, it felt off balance and the controls were cramped. They're just on top of each other. Okay, let's move on to best value, a favorite category for us. Look, these are all very expensive chainsaws and present pro users with a really large financial investment if you're going to do this. So which saw gives the best performance but reasonably priced, right? It was hands down the Milwaukee M18 Fuel. This top handle chainsaw finished in the top three, I guess, of every category except for weight. Additionally, it achieved first place in features category while tying for first in the stall out test. It also tied with Greenworks for the lowest price saw, so it only makes sense. All right, now for the category that we've all been waiting for. Who has the best battery-powered top handle chainsaw for 2023? At the completion of our testing, we gathered all of our data and on the saws, and we compiled them, and we used it to create rank structures for each category, finally using those ranks to create an overall rank structure. The saw with the lowest number of points in the final ranking structure is our overall winner. With a final overall score of 19 points, our best top handle chainsaw is the Milwaukee M18 Fuel. The Milwaukee is an ergonomically powerful and well thought out saw with great features. The safety system on the M18 saw was also one of the most preferred designs by our test crew due to its simplicity and similarity with traditional gas-powered saws. It's what they're used to. The Milwaukee is large and heavy though, and our pro users weren't sure if it would be suitable for full-time climbing work. The fact that the Milwaukee battery platform is so widespread and commercially available, we thought that might be a nice bonus, but it was not a determining factor for our tree care folks, our pros. That wasn't in their radar. Second place was a tie between the Steel, the MSA 22 TCO, and the Husqvarna. The two biggest names in the chainsaw world, and both companies make an incredibly, really nice battery-powered top handle chainsaw. The Husqvarna has been on the market now for several years and really has stayed unchanged, mostly unchanged. After testing it, we realized that this is because Husqvarna just got it right the first time, in the first generation. It's fast, it's light, it's powerful, it's a really powerful and nimble saw. Now the Stihl is a brand new to the market saw, and it focuses more on raw power. We described this saw earlier, we called it beastly, and really is the best word to describe it. It is powerful. The Stihl is just a hands down choice for demanding takedown work. Our crew all agreed that the Husqvarna and Stihl would probably be their top choice as a tree care professional, and likely the only choice that would earn a coveted spot in their tree trucks. And that's due to the commercial warranties, the dealer support networks, and the overall reputation of both brands in the industry. And that's what they're comfortable and used to. Third place went to the Stihl MSA 161T, and that shares many of the same perks as its younger but bigger brother. However, the MSA 161 has a proprietary bar design, and it's an uncommon chain size that makes it less desirable. And Stihl doesn't really do online sales or even for parts, making it even more difficult to source these bars and chains. The Makita XGT took 4th place overall, showing that it's a product with improved version, obviously, than its legacy 36 volt. It was a really nice saw, good power, really impressive. We were impressed with it. The improved battery technology and electronics of the XGT make the saw really just enjoyable to cut with. And the legacy 36 volt Makita and the Echo, they tied for 5th place. Echo struggled in our performance cutting tests, but was a crew favorite thanks to its lightweight, great ergonomics, and professional grade features. For smaller cutting tasks, the Echo is certainly worth a look, pruning and stuff like that. Greenworks Commercial came in 6th place overall. While powerful, our crew agreed that it lacked some of the features and ergonomics they want in a top panel chainsaw. So Greenworks, maybe pay attention to that a little bit. Okay guys, some final thoughts on this. Overall, our test crew was impressed by the evolution and capacities of these battery top panel chainsaws. The saws that we just discussed are all true professional grade tools. They're not DIY tools. And they can perform a variety of tasks common with arborists and tree care industries. We would strongly recommend that you guys check out a battery powered option. Just give it a chance. The ease of battery powered electric motors versus traditional gas powered engines is well discussed and documented. They make for exceptional user experience and will only really get better over time. We will put some purchase links in the description below. You can find a lot of these saws at Acme Tools. And guys, if you really enjoyed this video, please, I want to hear your comments, what you think. Gas, electric, battery. Give us a thumbs up if you liked it. Leave a comment, and please subscribe and hit that notification below because it helps support our site and we need your support. I'm Rob Robillard, and we'll see you at the next head-to-head test, which is going to be 14-inch concrete cutters. Take care.